Dear learners, I welcome you to this lesson on value base of social work. Previous lesson must have helped you understand that social work as a profession is marked by its unique knowledge base, skill base and value base. So the professional values are an integral part of any profession. It is the inculcation of the values that govern the attitude, behavior and practices of the professionals. Social work values shape the development of professional self. On the completion of this lesson, you will be able to understand and appreciate value base of social work, comprehend the core values of social work. Keeping these two objectives in mind, we will move on to our discussion on value base of social work or the social work core values. Now first, let's understand values. Each society has norms, values, customs and traditions to regulate the behavior and practices of its members. Values are generalized standards that people cherished as ideal. Values may vary from society to society, but there are human values that are considered universal in nature. For example, the value of freedom, liberty, equality. Values are basically shared agreements among members of a society as to what is desirable or undesirable in social life. Likewise, professional values are shared agreements and ideals to be cherished by the members of a particular profession. Like the social values, some of the professional values are common to all professions and some are quite specific to profession concerned. Social work as human service profession shares many values common to human service professionals. Social work is a dynamic profession addressing the changing needs of society. The profession has an obligation to articulate its values, ethical principles and ethical standards. These together help in developing professional self to discharge the responsibilities that a professional social worker is expected to do. Social workers need to be clear about their own personal values. That is, they need to have a clarification. An important aspect of social work practice is to understand that the particular set of values that individual hold influences their goals and decisions. What are my personal values will also influence my decision making. So accordingly, social workers need to have this value clarification about what are their personal values. Many of times, the personal values of social worker may be in conflict with the client system. This is called as value conflict, and it is here that the professional social worker is guided by social work values. Learning to suspend one's own values, value suspension, to keep the focus of helping on the client or the client group is an important yet difficult task for every social workers. That social workers need to have a change from within. So you need to suspend your personal values against the professional values so as to develop the professional self. Now let's come up to core values of social work. As discussed earlier, that with the changing times, the value base of social work has strengthened. Now we will try to enlist and discuss core values of social work. National Association of Social Workers, the umbrella Association of Social Workers USA, provide mission of social work profession is rooted in a set of core values. I am just taking National Association of Social Workers in America as a base to share the value base of social workers. Each country has national bodies and these national bodies have come up with the core values of the social work. Many of these core values are similarly being propounded by various bodies. Our purpose is simply to understand the core values of social work, and it is in this context, simply for an example's sake, we have taken the core values of social work as articulated by National Association of Social Workers of USA. These core values embraced by social workers throughout the profession's history are the foundation of social work's unique purpose and perspective. We can enlist these values as 1. Service, 2. Social justice, 3. Dignity and worth of person, 4. Importance of human relationship, 5th. Integrity, 6. Competence. This constellation of core values reflects what is unique to social work profession. Further, these values must be balanced within the context and complexity of human experiences. This is particularly important because social workers work in diverse situations, culturally diverse zones, and that's why it is important to contextualize values in terms of the society, in terms of the cultural context where social workers are working. The Council on Social Work Education, the accreditation and regulatory body of social work education in USA, considers core values of social work, and these are service, social justice, the dignity and worth of the person, the importance of human relationship, integrity, competence, human rights, and scientific inquiry. Now, purpose of giving these two set of values, one articulated by National Association of Social Workers and second articulated by Council on Social Work Education, is simply to make you understand that the core values of social work in terms of the content, in terms of the nature, are same. The core values of the professions have also evolved with the profession. The social work has also responded to the changing values in the society and movements in the society. Accordingly, we find the varying list of values propounded by the social work scholars and social work associations. In view of this, we will discuss some of the core values of social work which are fundamental to the practice of social work. And it is on these values that we will have elaborate discussion. 1. Dignity and worth of person. 2. Diversity. 3. Social justice. 4th, human rights. 5th, integrity. And 6th, service. Now let's begin with dignity and worth of person. The faith in the intrinsic dignity and worth of each person is to the core of social work profession. It binds social workers to the service of the clients irrespective of their personal, social and other identities. So for us, it is the dignity and worth of the client that is important, and it is immaterial for us what is the social identity of the client. Social workers respect the inherent dignity and worth of the person. Social workers treat each person in a caring and respectful fashion, mindful of individual differences and cultural and ethnic diversity. Social workers seek to enhance clients' capacity and opportunity to change and address their own needs. This makes social workers to respect and value the clients without bias and prejudice. This slowly and gradually results in social workers overcoming the value conflict by suspending their individual personal values against the professional values. This value of inherent dignity and worth makes social workers competent to work in diverse field situations. So once we adhere to the value of inherent dignity and worth of person, then it becomes immaterial to us whether we are working in a prison zone, whether we are working with female sex workers, whether we are working with drug addicts, whether we are working with other categories of the client. For us, each client is important. So the value of dignity and worth of person makes client central to the social work profession. Now let's move on to the value of diversity. Human societies are marked by social and ethnic diversities, implying a variety in terms of norms, values, customs and traditions. In brief, cultural diversity is a significant and beautiful marker of dynamic human societies. But many of times, the cultural practices of groups may be different and conflicting in nature. Social workers, being product of a specific cultural context, may face value conflict of personal and professional values. Social workers' own cultural practices may be in conflict with that of clients. It is the value of diversity that argues for appreciating diversity and respecting the diversity in cultural practices. This inculcation of value of diversity makes social workers competent to work in diverse cultural contexts. However, many of the cultural practices may be discriminatory and oppressive in nature, and hence these professional social workers must enlist these practices and challenge these. So the value of diversity makes a point we need to understand that in society there are diverse cultures. Each society has diversity in terms of cultural practices, and social workers, when they are working in different cultural contexts, they need to understand and appreciate this diversity. But at the same time, they also need to understand those cultural practices which are oppressive and discriminatory in nature. In terms of such cultural practices, social workers need to be vigilant to understand such cultural practices and also to challenge these practices. So on the one hand, value of diversity binds social workers to appreciate the cultural diversity. At the same time, it also implies a responsibility on the part of social worker to understand those cultural practices which are oppressive in nature and also to challenge those practices. Now let's move on to value of social justice. Human societies are also marked by social structures and systems of social stratification which are discriminatory and oppressive in nature. Each society has its social structure and system of social stratification whereby group of the people, members of the society are stratified in different kind of classes. So we need to understand that social structures and system of social stratifications may also be discriminatory and oppressive in nature. The social structure discriminates across the group of people in the same cultural context and legitimizes the inequality in the society. It also results in unequal access to resources and opportunities, thus further reinforcing inequality, oppression and exploitation. The value of social justice emphasizes on giving justice to the individuals and groups on whom society has done injustice. Social workers thus challenge the social injustice and promote sensitivity about oppression and cultural and ethnic diversity. The value of social justice provides social workers lens to understand and express that many of the much acclaimed social practices may give privilege to one group of people at the cost of oppression to other group. The value of social justice makes social work practice anti-oppressive in nature. It implies on social workers to pursue social change and promote empowerment and liberation of people. In this context, that we need to understand that in each society, the members of the society have their social identities, and many of these social identities give privilege to one group of people at the cost of other group of people, like the example of upper caste, lower caste, like the example of male and female. For example, I being a male, I need to understand that society is patriarchal in nature. So there are privileges given to male. If I understand this notion that the male has privilege, then I will keep an eye that by virtue of this privilege, I should not oppress the women. My becoming of male or female is not my choice. So simply becoming a male does not mean that you are oppressive, but we need to understand that by virtue of male and the society being patriarchal in nature, there is a privilege as male. And if social workers are conscious of this privilege, then they will try to see that by virtue of this privilege, there is no oppression. So value of social justice simply helps social workers to develop an eye on social practices in the society. Social workers contribute in the empowerment and liberation of people, particularly the marginalized sections of society. Value of human rights. The value of human rights recognizes the intrinsic rights of every individual by the virtue of being member of human community. It implies that every human being has fundamental rights to liberty, equality, justice, and all those rights which are necessary for the right to life with dignity. The inclusion of human rights as core value of social work also marks a progress in the approach of social work to clients. The value of human rights supplements and further strengthens the value of dignity and worth. It recognizes that each person has not only inherent dignity and worth, but also inherent rights that are necessary to a life with dignity. This value of human rights makes social work a human rights profession. So value of human rights makes social work a human rights profession. Next, coming to integrity as a value. The professional integrity is an essential element of any professional practice. The integrity as a value of social work implies that social workers are continually aware of profession's mission, values, ethical principles, and ethical responsibilities, and practice in manner consistent with them. It also implies professional competence of social workers and requires them to continually update, enhance their professional expertise. The value of integrity makes social workers conscious of their professional obligations and professional competence required for practice. It makes social workers by themselves accountable and trustworthy to profession, organizations in which they work, and to their clients. So the value of integrity makes social workers self-regulating in themselves. It binds them to self-assess themselves, self-regulate their behavior and practices. And one of the important accordingly responsibility on social worker is to assess themselves, assess their competence, whether they are competent to work in a particular context or not, or what needed develop that competent. And it is by virtue of this value of integrity, the social workers are continuously update their knowledge and skills for successful interventions. Let's move on to another value, that is the value of service. Social workers' primary goal is to ensure well-being of individuals and society. The value of service makes social workers put their professional expertise in the service of people to solve their problems and enhance well-being. It also implies that social workers provide service based on unique knowledge, skills and values of social work. Thus, the value of service makes social workers committed to clients and conscious of their professional competence for the quality of services delivered. So, the value of service makes social workers answerable and accountable to their service, because social work is a human service profession. Social workers are to provide services to people, whether at individual level or group level or community level, and this service has to be the quality service. Value of service further reinforces the belief that the social work practice has to be a quality practice, and it binds social workers to develop competence for providing effective service. By this way, we have talked about 6 core values of social work. Again, I repeat, we started with the value of dignity and worth of person, value of diversity, value of social justice, value of human rights, integrity and service. These 6 values, the number is not important that these are 6 values or 7 values. Important is these values together makes the social workers committed to their client system. For example, the female sex workers. Now, the very term in itself is very provocative. You may be asked what social workers will do with female sex workers. Now, it is here at this particular juncture that the value of again worth and dignity implies that we need to approach that particular person as an individual with intrinsic worth and dignity. So, this particular value helps us how to approach the client. Its changes are very understanding about approaching the people, and it is at this particular juncture that again I would argue that we need to relinquish many of the personal values against the professional values, because our personal values are product of our socialization process, the product of the context in which we are socialized, and accordingly we see the various diverse groups of the society with a particular eye. Now, that eye needs to be changed. Now, our gaze has to be a professional gaze where we need to approach person with worth and dignity. It is in this context the value of social justice that becomes important. Value of social justice will enforce that yes, if they are female sex workers, they are in a particular context, then society also has to owe why they are in this particular situation. So, social justice will argue that we need to understand the context in which individual is, the context in which individual has reached to that particular position. So, and similarly the value of human rights that talks about that no matter what a person is, that person has rights. So, these values basically helps us in understanding the client, in approaching the client, and the way we see the people, way we approach the people, accordingly are our goals, accordingly are our decisions, accordingly are practices. Other values like value of integrity. Integrity focuses, integrity emphasizes that as a professional I need to be competent. I need to be competent to approach the client. I need to be also aware of the fact that I should not exploit the client. I should not misuse my position as a expert, as a social worker. So, these values in sum total helps us in understanding the people in diverse cultural contexts. Some of the cultural contexts are such that even people do not want to take those terms And it is in this context values becomes important, and these values helps the social workers in overcoming those negative orientations and develop what we called as professional self. And finally, to sum up, professional values are shared agreements, meaning thereby these core values are to be shared by all professionals. These are the unique core values of social work as a profession, and these values are to be shared by all social workers, and that's why we say that the professional values are shared agreements and ideals to be cherished by the members of a particular profession. We as members of social work profession cherish and idealize these values. Each profession has the professional obligation to articulate its values, ethical principles, and ethical standards. The core values much cherished by social workers: dignity and worth of person, diversity, social justice, human rights, integrity, and service. Now there are few questions. I would like to pose few questions. Question number 1, what do you understand by professional obligations? Question number 2, enlist the core values of social work. Now let's move on to references by Skidmore, Thackeray and Farley. Title of the book, Introduction to Social Work. Second book that you can refer, again a very basic textbook, that is by Brenda Du Bois and K.K. Millay. Title of the book is Social Work, an Empowering Profession. Third book that you can refer is by Morales and Schaeffer. Title of the book is Social Work, a Profession of Many Faces. And for the general history of social work across the world, you can refer a book by Catherine A. Kendall, and title of the book is Worldwide Beginning of Social Work.